Welcome to Timeless Voices. My name is Heidi Adder. I'm one of the instructors for the Timeless Voices Youth Podcast program. These interviews were recorded in July 2024. In this piece, you're going to hear Hope Elson, Brittany Janes, Samantha Newman, and Mary Lamb Saunders interviewing Mina Campbell. Mina is 61 years old, an artist and crafter and Inuk knowledge holder. We spoke to Mina at the Labrador Friendship Center. It was these young people's first time doing an interview. You'll also hear 18-month-old Amy make an appearance. How's that? Perfect.
Tell me how and when you started making uluit.
I started the year of COVID, which I think is maybe 4 years ago. So about 30 years ago, I did a ulu workshop and just made one. And then years went on, like 30 years or so. And then because I work at the center seasonal, and it's a tourism center, the year of COVID, we hardly had any visitors. So I only work in the summer, and then in the fall I get laid off, and then I start doing crafts for the winter. But that year, because we weren't having any visitors because of COVID, we all brought our crafts to work. And by the fall, I was sick of doing crafts. So I said, I'm going to try to do something else. And I remembered that I made an ulu one time, and I said, I'm going to try to see if I remember, which I did. I remembered most of it. And then I went to see John Gowdy, because he knows how to make lots of things, to refresh my memory on a few parts. And then I made 10. I made 10 uluit to make sure that I wouldn't forget how to do it. And so since then, I've made, I don't know, quite a lot. So that's about 4 years ago, I guess. COVID was somewhere around there. So I have to have the equipment, which is... First, I have to have a saw blade, so I make them from hand saw blades, those ones like this. So that's what I cut the ulu out of. And I use a Dremel tool, which is just a little easy hand tool. And that's what I like using because it's not stressful. I'm not wanting to do it fast. I just it's a hobby. So I use a Dremel tool to cut it out. And then I have to have a sander to sand it off, a grinder, a drill, and I think that's about it.
Did you hear about
Uluit?
Yeah, growing up.
Yeah, well, my grandmother used to clean sealskins for people. So back in them days, in the spring, we used to have a hunt, and we still do have a hunt. But back then, the sealskins were sent out to the fur market. So people would make money off the sealskins. So she would clean them for the people, and that's what she used, was an ulu to clean the sealskins, which is what I also do. But people also use them for cutting up meat and stuff, but mainly we use them for cleaning sealskins. The tradition is that it's an Inuit woman's knife, and that once you have an ulu, it's yours forever until you pass it down, and that people in the past, and I guess still could, like once you have an ulu, that it's yours, and people have them and take them to their grave. So they're buried with the women that owns them. And I don't think traditionally women made uluit, they just used them. So it's something that may be a tradition that will be started. Yeah.
Why do you still use uluit?
I use them for cleaning sealskins mainly. Once in a while I might use it for cutting something up if I'm cutting up fish, like out in my workshop, but it's mainly for cleaning sealskins. Well, it's the best, that's the only tool that I know how to clean a sealskin with, and it's the best one because of how it's shaped, and that's what my grandmother used, and many other Inuit and non-Inuit, mainly women would have used, but some men also use them. Yeah. Mm-hmm. I sure hope they do continue to use them and make them. Yeah, because it's a big part of our culture, in Inuit culture, to use uluit. is something that's been used for since time immemorial, which is before memory. So, and hopefully it'll continue to be used and passed on. And the problem is these days I find that people are more, they don't want to touch things that they find, like they might find gross, like sealskins, and people mainly want to do stuff on their phones. So this way I think that if we keep a handful of people interested that will pass it on, like Samantha and people, then it'll be passed on for the future. And it needs to be kept on, passed on, the traditional usage of them. People send me these videos of people cleaning sealskins with a pressure hose. Like I must have had about 6 or 7 email messages, because you can clean them really fast. You put them on a board and you just spray them. I'm not interested in that. People think I'm interested in it because I clean sealskins, but I'm not interested in that. And it's okay for other people to do it if they want to, but it's not for me. Yeah, the faster way to clean your sealskin if you want.
Tell us how you harvest and prepare your sealskin.
Okay, that's a big question, the harvesting part especially. So we go out on the ice in the spring, usually around the end of April. And we go out at the end of April because that's when the seals are good. Good means that they're now white coats, because they're young seals that were just born a few weeks, well, maybe a couple of months. They're probably 2 to 3 months old. And so we don't want white coat skins, and we don't even want any seals that have white coat on them. We want them to be black, because when they're born, they're white. And it's really controversial, the white coats, because the Newfoundland seal hunt, they used to kill white coats, like Greenpeace and all those people are against it, and so are we. We don't want to kill white coats. So we wait till around the end of April, and then we go out on the ice on Lake Melville, which is from Northeast River to Riglet area, and we look for the seals. Sometimes we see them on the ice, and sometimes we find the houses, which are rough pieces of ice that are around, and so they have breathing holes. So there's probably 8 or 9 breathing holes, or holes where the seals come up and lie down on the ice. And so we wait by the holes to either shoot or dart them. And so that's a skill in itself, is you have to keep your feet still, because any little movement just like that, they would hear it and they'd go away to another hole. So there could be 8 or 10 holes, and some holes could be this big and some could be this big. And so all they want to do is, some of them are breathing holes. They just stick their nose up for a breath and go back down. And the bigger holes, they come up on the ice and they sunbathe and roll around and play. And so that's how we seal hunt. So I use the meat. So we eat the meat. My first meal is always fried with onions. And then a second meal, I'll stew it with salt beef and potatoes and onions, and put a pastry on the top. So that's the meat. And then the sealskin, usually got about this much fat on it. And I take that off with a knife, sometimes with ulu, but usually that's done out on the ice. It's taken that big thick. So there's only about that much fat left on it that I'll then take home. I'll take home the skin, because then it's about this big instead of this big with all that fat on it. And clean it on a Mudjivik board. It's called a board, which is a 2x8 board. And I clean it with the ulu. And then after it's cleaned with the ulu, then I wash it a couple times with Blue Dawn dish liquid. That's the kind that they use to get the oil off the birds. So yeah. So that's what I use. Wash it a couple times, and then just rinse it in cold water. And now these days, something different than my grandmother did, I salt it. So I put it out on the floor, spread it out, and put a whole box of table salt on it. Fold it up and put it away for a week. And I take it out, and then I wash the salt off, and then I spread it on a frame. And then I dry it, and it probably takes a week, depends on the weather, so it's done outside. And then after it's dried, then I'll cut out whatever I'm going to make, probably most always boots. So I'll cut a boot leg out, which is about that big, so one seal is for one boot. And then I got to scrape it. scrape any grease that's on it, and soften it up like this, fold it up and soften it up, and then I can make a pair of boots.
What are your favorite things to make with it?
I like making boots because it's the easiest. It's just a straight sew right down and put the bottom on. But I also like making upik because they're so cute. When you're finished, so the little, you know what it is? The little owl, the little upik owl. So when I make them, I cut them out, and then I cut out the eyes and the beak and the feet and sew that on. But then I stuff it and I sew it around. And the last thing that I do is put the pupils in the eyes, and it comes alive. So they all have like their own little personalities. When I teach a course, the eyes and the beak and the feet are from moose hide, and the seal is from sealskin. So I just cut out a square and make them cut their own eyes and beak out and feet. So it's their own, and they can make it look like. And then you don't even try to make it look like anything. Sometimes I put a little dot on the pupil. Sometimes they're big. But each one of them. And sometimes if I make a lot and I have them all like right there, and it looks like they're all looking at me. So I'm going to turn away because they're all looking at me. So it's probably my favorite thing because they're so cute.
How does sealskin connect you to your culture?
Yep, so seals were, and still are, one of the most important animals to the Inuit culture because Inuit live on the coast, and it was the main animal for food, for shelter, because they made sealskin houses, for clothing, even for transportation, because they used the skins for sleighs. In the past they would have, but it's still important because I use it for food and for the skins. And like I said, it's one of the most important animals to the Inuit culture because of where they live on the coast.
Tell us about how you were raised, shaped who you are today.
Yeah, well, I was raised by my grandparents, so that made a big part of how I was raised. Because if you're raised by a generation back, you learn a lot more traditional things. Because, when I remember as a kid getting Christmas presents or Christmas stocking presents, Santa Claus stuff, and I would have a doll that I'd have to make instead of Barbies because of my grandparents, right? So that's just an example. But I learned a lot of different skills that I wouldn't have learned, I don't think, if I was raised by my biological parents, because my grandparents knew a lot more, and they knew a lot more cultural and traditional things than my biological parents, because for some reason they didn't know very much, I don't think. Yeah, so I say being raised by my grandparents made me, and not only learning things, but having a certain way about you, like being more patient, which I think I am most of the time, but different values and different things when you're raised by your grandparents. And especially my grandma, because my grandfather died when I was 11, so it was just me and my grandma and my little brother. So I also took on the skills of sort of co-parenting with my grandma to raise Jerry, because she was old, and she was 56 when they took me. She was 56 and he was 54, I think. So, and that's how it was, not only in my family, in lots of other families, especially, and it was through traditional adoption. I don't have no paperwork, just whoever needed to help and take care of us. And so my uncle also, and his wife also helped me because they lived next door and were close by. So, but it was like that, and still is like that. People still do that.
Why is it important to practice your culture?
Yeah, it's important so that it don't fade away and die and go away. And like I was saying earlier, one of the problems these days is people are so technical and wanting to be on their phones and iPads that the hands-on traditional things are being not lost, but they're fading away. So it's important to try to keep them alive so that they don't die. Because even if we're not using things for the same means, it still needs to be remembered and passed on.
Do you have any fears about the future of cultural traditions?
Yes, I do. I really do, because, like I said, I think what they need to do is start making up games on their phones and things so that they'll learn. You can have a game on there, clean the sealskin the fastest. Because that is a fair, and where people, even though when I cleaned the polar bear skin and I cleaned the sealskin at my work this year, 2 schools came over, Shahajit and North River, and none of them found it gross. And I think they do, but I think it's because they're watching me, not actually doing it. And not only that, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And so I am concerned about it because I don't know if the next generation of people are going to have the interest in working that hard for the end product.
Can you tell us about the danger of what you think won't happen if people don't practice their culture?
I don't want any part of our culture to die, because once it dies and that knowledge is gone, then it's gone. It's gone forever. And that part of our culture is going to die, and we don't want our culture to die. I can't say why. That's why we don't want our culture to die. And there's a risk of it. And not only that, but maybe the next generation or the next one or the one after will need those skills. Maybe this is all going to crash. Hey, it might. All the technical, and then you got to try to live off the land again, go back that way. So if you got these skills, it'll be easier, not easy, easier.
How do you think Inuit culture will evolve?
Well, just like I said, maybe you're going to put games on your phones to learn about Inuit culture. Maybe you're going to learn about it by doing what you're doing here, doing interviews with people to save it and keep it alive. Because even if you don't use this for anything, you'll have it, the knowledge that I'm sharing with you now. If you video people doing it, because then it's saved. And to teach it to the younger people through technology, because that's what they're interested in. There's no other way that you're going to be able to do it, because you can't force people to do it. And games are in. Yeah, I think you make them see it more. That's it. And I think that maybe that's something that society meaning the schools and programs, places like this and other indigenous places have it. That's the only way. Make people go into those situations. And people are, like even at where I work now, the last couple of years, there's a demand for people wanting to see sealskins being cleaned. And so that's a start. And then maybe the next one. And I did teach one class 1 year of cleaning sealskins. Yeah. Yeah. So more of that needs to come back. And I think it's up to the indigenous organizations and the government in general, society, to bring those things back in. For people to get used to it. And I mean, I never ever used to find it smell good when I was a teenager either. But as you get older, then you realize, like now, back then, when my grandmother cleaned sealskins in the spring, there'd be sealskins everywhere in our house, hung up over every door. Every doorknob had seal grease, every light switch, everything. And I'm a teenager, like your age, and I'm going out, this evening to maybe see if I can find somebody good to look at. And I'm full of seal grease. Not good. So I didn't like it back then, but now I appreciate it because, and she never ever taught me, like to say, come here, Mina, sit down, I'm going to show you. But because she was doing it in the spring all my life, all I got to do is close my eyes and I can see her. And I can see her cleaning it and I can see her pushing the grease off. And I got a little bit of help, had a couple questions from my uncles who also cleaned her, one uncle. I think that even though younger people might not want to be immersed in it now, make them do it.